Weird. Everything's mirrored. But it's not mirrored when it goes out, it's just mirrored here.
When do you bring this up?
Up now, it's actually, that is, so, yeah.
Oh, okay, we won't. I think I'll see you.
We won't come up because our audio's, wait a minute, where's our video? Where did we go?
It's beautiful.
I was wondering,
If you don't give us an ass. You know.
See, I got that from the doctor's office.
It's a facility. Yeah.
Oh, that's not.
Or, no.
Scared me there.
Okay. Yep, whenever we're going to executive session.
Oh, but I'm gonna use the mic now.
We wanted to do an executive session at the beginning, to talk about the conversation we made, and I had. So I'll give you a call so we can get it. All right, appreciate it.
Okay, you ready? One more second.
Board members, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I would like to call this board meeting for September the 15th to order. Call to order, please.
Mr. Ballard.
Here.
Ms. Nazario.
Here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Sturgill.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Thank you. Pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I need a motion to suspend the order. Go into an executive session.
Motion to suspend the order and go into executive session for, I believe, it's contracts and
EPC litigation.
any litigation.
Support. Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
Ms. Nazario.
Yes.
And Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
We'll suspend the order, we will be back.
I did go into the settings. I didn't see where I can straighten it out. Yeah. I don't- That's what it looks like. I think it just might be an algorithm or just a setting that you. Well, the first time I had. If there's any audio going on, it's not ours. Completely stopped. Anybody else that have a mic open?
So it has to be reverse what they're seeing.
It's bizarre. That's the way it is. That's.
But it's like being on the other side of the camera. That's actually normal.
It comes when it comes when it plays back.
If you flip it the other way, we'll be back.
I can't flip it. It defaults to that. Yeah.
You're expecting a short meeting?
I heard this. Oh, no. Wow. So the meeting was live. Great summer. The other one was. It's a fraction of what the whole. Everybody just like that. Those are some of the keys. Yeah. Yeah, right. Then you gotta pump it off. This says you're in. Release this tension on this, right? Oh, okay. No,
You have side effects.
We're still gonna do two, you think?
I'm sure. On the front of the house.
Yeah, I thought we were- I thought we were public hearing, then go into executive, then come back out. I heard it. Yeah, it's a great draft, but we can put it on TV now.
I mean, I can hear the speaker.
Yeah, I'll make sure he probably has to. I'll make sure he has. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
And how they put it
You're right, yeah. Well, should be happy to keep it.
He's like, you're not doing
Ah. Yeah, right, yeah. So how's your husband work? Is that good? Is he still on?
He's working, so they offer him.
Sure. Yeah. He does now. Thanks. Yeah, I found it. Yes. Oh, God. That's what we see. Jim watches show, it's on BOE, St. Louis.
Oh, you gotta watch it. Oh, my God.
Well, yeah, that, he started 150,000. Go up. Some of them over $1 million. Freaking awesome. Oh, like, travel. Oh, yeah. Don't you hate that? Yes, you do. It's okay. Get it done, professional. I don't have the time to do it. So I hire somebody and then you get something, You have a computer with it too? Oh, good, so you'll keep it open. Yes. You know, you can, shop for your gas, you can get some little deals. Apples to apples. So it's like, shop around, yes. Check on your bill. Get collected gas, right? So, Columbia, we have a fixed charge for the infrastructure. We have the same. Yes, bills. 38. $6 gas. Because that's what the but once winter comes around. You use a lot of gas. Maybe it's a good deal. And it depends on the community. It's part of an egg. Some communities are shallow. So, yeah, you just can't tell them. Matter of fact, switch my. You go cook. Because you keep it down. No way. Really? Actually, corn, if you store it, does. Well, yes, that's what I used to do. So. So, hey, I didn't even realize this. So. There's water. Some springs. I didn't know. So now it's like, oh.
Hey, somebody just texted me that the sound is on.
Barbara Washington.
Hold on, I wonder if this is the sound on here? Huh? Yeah, it's, but that's not what's broadcasting. Huh. I don't know. It doesn't show anything going out here. The sound is on. Oh.
Oh, you can still see it or hear it there. Doesn't make sense.
No, I mean, that's what I'm broadcasting.
You shouldn't get anything at all.
Yeah, it's definitely something here.
Isn't that your camera? Oh, wait, mute your phone, see. Where's he? He said here. I thought that was.
What's that?
I thought that was Jeff Graham's.
Yeah. So I have no idea. I heard that on my phone.
I need a motion to come out of executive session, please.
So moved.
Can I get support?
Support.
Roll call?
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Here. Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Ms. Nazario?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
We're out of executive session. Recognition of visitors. Seeing none. First hearing of the public.
Good evening. My name is Julie Garcia. You still need my address.
Sure.
4612 Andover Avenue, Lorain, 44055. Good evening, members of the board, CEO Dr. Graham, and members of the ADC. I'm Julie Garcia, the newly elected president of the Lorain Teachers Association. I will share my contact information with you privately if you would like to have it. Recently, the members of the association's building reps voted unanimously to support the LCS renewal levy. Now my members are asking me how they can volunteer. So if somebody would put us in touch with Bambi, they are ready and willing to help with the levy campaign.
That's it.
Thank you.
This is our representative, our number one guy, and our number two right here.
Yeah, Mr. Sturgill has my information and we have communicated.
Thank you.
I'll provide you with Bambi's information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
I do have a question kind of through Bill and you. I know in the past, our teachers are fantastic about making contributions, be it directly out of their paychecks or deposit. Do you know the status of that? And are there some things that we can do to really kind of encourage that and make sure that process is in place?
I don't know the status of that. That would be something maybe the treasurer can answer for you as far as how many members are doing that. But if you give us the information, I'd be happy to share it with our members. We have social media. We also have the school email, and we can put that out to them.
I believe that recently, I know that there was a letter, I don't know if it's been distributed yet, but I know there is a letter out there to ask to go out, to everyone in the district, not just the teachers. You'd be surprised how much support we get from our custodians and everything. But I think considering what we're going into in the future, that it would be a good idea if we all contributed. I know I have since like 2011, I've been contributing. So I would encourage everybody, just even if it's $2 a pay, it would be, it's better than nothing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Jim Popio, 3270 Regina Avenue, Lorain, 44052. Cleveland.com reported yesterday that the only schools in the state not having any fall football are the schools in the Cleveland Senate League, Cleveland Central Catholic High School, and Lorain. It's unfortunate that Lorain is included in the list. Those who wanted to play football for the Titans this year worked very hard. They earned the praise of a senior citizen, Mr. David Paskavan, who wrote a letter that appeared in the Chronicle Telegram, mentioning that he would see this group of 10 or more Titans this summer, conditioning on their own at Oakwood Park. The Morning Journal had a front page picture story of a group of players working out behind George Daniel under the direction of some volunteer adults. It's obvious that this year's players wanted to have a season, and they are not the only ones. In a Chronicle story celebrating a couple's 40th wedding anniversary, Mr. Ron Kopas stated that his favorite pastime was watching the Lorain Titans. Such praise from local senior citizens was not the case years ago. I recall about 30 years ago, a resident wrote a letter to the editor that he was not voting for the upcoming school levy because students would litter his lawn with potato chip bags on the way home from school. Very good turnouts of senior citizens at Titan football and basketball games are further proof of the war relationship between Lorain High athletes and people in my age category. Well, one of the reasons given by Lorain school leaders why fall sports were canceled is that our student athletes may pass along the virus to their older relatives. There is another point on this picture too, that senior citizens get such an emotional lift from watching their grandchildren and other young people play sports. And positive vibes are so badly needed by people of all ages in this pandemic for mental health reasons, as was explained in a lengthy article in the Chronicle yesterday. It's also noteworthy that a story last week indicated that after the first 1,000 high school football games played this season nationwide, there was not a single case of COVID-19 problems. There have been a few situations locally where a game had to be canceled, like those involving North Olmsted and Strongsville, but the ill player for each team had not been affected during a game, and likely not during a practice, since the cases at the two schools involved just a single player. Both recovered quickly, according to reports. There are profound problems that can occur from canceling sports. The last time Lorain schools did so was in 1991 due to financial reasons. 164 student athletes, including many of our brightest and best, left Lorain schools with resulting loss in state funding of around $1 million. 3 of the best and nicest left the past few weeks and are now enrolling and excelling in football at Clearview. 6'6" Beyond Smith Belcher, Isaiah Harrison, and an 8th grader, Luke Wilson, who has been likened by Jay Ferguson to Sandusky's Orlando Pace, who started at Ohio State and in the pros. The 1991 debacle here in Lorain basically gutted our football program. In the 5 years prior to the shutdown of sports, Admiral King football had produced 3 players who would go on to the NFL: Jerry Evans, Raymond Harris, and Brian DeMarco. That's a Lorain County first. After the shutdown in 91, Admiral King would not have a winning season in football for 16 years, not until 2007. This drought occurred even after the original Lorain High closed in 1995, with many of the Steelmen coming over to play for King. When they quickly voted, the Lorain School Board saw how many of its students were losing in 1991. They quickly voted in August of that year to restore sports, but it was too late to restart football, as the opponents of Lorain High, King, and Southview had already filled openings on their schedules. That is not the case this year, as schools are still advertising vacancies on their schedule. Schools have until Thursday of this week to declare if they wish to take part in the playoffs that will begin on October 9th for all schools that want to. Just yesterday, Cincinnati schools announced they were resuming fall sports. Earlier, Akron and Toledo schools also changed their mind. Sports have brought pride and respect to Lorain, not only for excellence in the field or court of competition, but in the classroom too. 3 top student athletes from this year's graduating class of Lorain High have been given very generous scholarships to the College of Worcester. Football's Savon Chavis and Michael Smith, and basketball's Aaron Whitehead. Their basketball teammate at Lorain High, Deontay Benajan, is at Baldwin Wallace, and the 3rd senior on last year's basketball team, Jordan Jackson, is going to Notre Dame College of Cleveland, which also welcomes 3 Lorain football standouts, Tyshawn Lay, Dalen Dower, and Carlos Smith. In addition to having fine athletic programs, those 3 colleges also have rich academic traditions. And of course, we have other athletes from recent vintage going to other schools with great success, especially those from the past years like Devon Andrews, Nas Bohannon, Dede Grant, Rashad Berry, and a young man who played football here, didn't play football at Ohio State, but he's having a tremendous experience as a student leader at Ohio State University, Mr. Sly Worthy. The quality of Lorain's sports programs in recent years has attracted outstanding student athletes from parochial high schools. This has happened nowhere else locally. It's usually the other way around. Last year's basketball team had Seth Wilson from Akron St. Vincent St. Mary, Deontay Benajan from Archbishop Malloy in Queens, New York, Aaron Whitehead, who came from Parma, Padua, and at the junior varsity level, Rashad Carter from Parma Holy Name. Football a couple of years ago had Zach Evans from Believer Catholic, who is now playing football at Gannett University, and Jace Tarpley from Open Door, who is now at Wittenberg. Every effort should be made to give the athletic programs that have given so much pride and pleasure to Lorain and its citizens of all ages at least the chance to experience what every other student athlete in the county and the conference is now enjoying. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else? Seeing none. Number 6, approval of the minutes. Consider approval for the August 24th minutes, 2020. Need a motion?
Motion to approve?
Support. Roll call?
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
Ms. Nazario.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Old business, is there any old business? Next item, approval of the coronavirus relief fund, broadband Ohio connectivity.
This is the new fund that the state wants us to use to account for the Broadband Ohio connectivity grant.
Yeah, just briefing it real quick. A motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Any support? Mr. Bond supported. Is there any questions about this, guys? Everybody clear, understand? Roll call, please.
Ms. Nazario.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill.
Yes.
And Mr. Williams.
Yes. I do have a question. It's okay regarding this.
Okay,
Um,
you can't unvote now, but.
No, I mean,
Yes,
it's
sir.
more of, information. So presently, how are we doing with providing internet service for families in our district who don't have it? Or what are our numbers looking like? Do we know if we're close to providing it for everyone? Is there any, what are we?
As of today, we have received requests for 485 internet connections. And our partnership is with Spectrum, so it's not a hotspot, it's more than that. And one of the downsides of hotspots is you don't have the capacity to handle much. Typically the hotspots that we have is one hotspot per computer. So with the partnership that we have with Spectrum, we can provide internet to families of 3, 4, 5 children. But I couldn't tell you exactly, I know we've had 485 requests. I couldn't tell you exactly where we are in the percentage of how many are actually connected to the project.
And I know we had some projections of what, on the top side of what it might look like.
I want to say originally it was 750-ish. And that came from when we took our student data and let Spectrum go through the addresses to see who already had Spectrum. But again, some of our homes could have other internet providers. So that would be the top end number.
So you're roughly 1/3 of the way through. If you had 750 and it's 485, you got around to 500. So
We're about 2/3 of the way of the most. Now, again, some people may have had other access to internet that wasn't Spectrum. So that 750 number, 780 number, whatever it was, were the number of families that didn't have a contract with Spectrum.
So it's kind of just an estimate.
Yes,
Based on
it's a
that.
high-end estimate. But again, we also, the students, when you look at all of it, we also have students who move in whose addresses we wouldn't have, incoming students, for kindergartners, preschoolers. So it's a rough high number.
So this is an IT question, and I know you're not the IT guy, so I'm going to get you way
We're
over
going
the
to
deep
go right
water
now.
So I know during the summer, we work with the public library with their hotspots. And I think the hotspots that they had were able to have up to 10 different devices per hotspot. So it sounds like we must have a different style of a hotspot.
We have a number of different places where we got hotspots. And is there anybody that, the question is, if you couldn't hear it, to anybody who can respond, that the library provided hotspots that allow for up to 10 connections per hotspot. I think that the hotspots that we have remaining, if I understand correctly, is roughly enough capacity to handle 1 to 2 computers per every hotspot. Is there anybody on the Zoom that can jump in and save me?
We won't leave you hanging. I was just kind of making.
No, that's fair. I'll give it to you.
And secondarily, for those students who are not connected yet, do we have any kind of a plan in place to let them?
There are hotspots. We still have hotspot pieces, yeah, for the layover. And right now, if I am a student, I was here last year, as I understand it. If I was here last year, I'm on that address, and it's clear to Spectrum that, it's clear to us that it's a student, and it's clear to Spectrum that they don't have Spectrum service, it's pretty quick turnaround. But if I moved or I'm new, it takes a little bit longer because we have to send it to them, so we have to find out if they have a contract, so their folks can approve it, then it goes out. But they're, nationally speaking, they're giving out 5,000 of these a day. So the capacity is there to move quickly.
And we would just encourage, if you're a community person out there watching this, and you know of a family in our district, and they do not have access to internet, we need to be aware of that. So encourage them to call in for themselves. If you have to advocate for them and help them navigate through it, it's imperative that all of our students have access, because there's learning going on every day, and they're not being part of it. So we have resources to provide that, and but we need to make sure that by any means necessary, however ways you guys can help us to make sure we know which students don't have access. So,
and all you need to do is call the building where your child attends, and if it's anything internet related.
Comparatively speaking, between this and spring, I remember Michael Scott saying, we don't want this to be like spring was. I mean, I know what position everybody was put in. Are you fairly happy with the way things are going? I mean, this is the second week.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's kids that aren't online yet.
We're struggling in some areas. Some areas I think it's going pretty well. I'll defer to Ross here in a couple seconds. In some areas, we're getting feedback that things are going much better than anybody expected. Teachers of younger students are struggling with the frustration of, and the way it's phrased to me more than once is, I feel like I'm tech support for a 5-year-old. That's tough to talk a 5-year-old or how to navigate the technology piece. So, and obviously when you're spending your time doing that, you're missing out on the substance of the lesson. So I think that we are all over the place. But if you're asking me if I am satisfied with the progress that we made, I am impressed actually with our staff and their ability to, we'll talk about it camps here in a second if you want to, and we haven't lost time to get those thoughts. We talk about our staff's enthusiastic, really aggressive approach in learning. It's been very impressive. And there's a lot of pieces between, good teaching is good teaching. And we have good teachers, and we have a good process, we have good people. But sometimes the mechanism to get it from, where the experts are in the classrooms to the living rooms has been a little bit of a challenge.
And I don't want to poke holes in
please.
Ross's presentation, so the technology piece is where we'll stay, and then when you get the floor, you're probably going to answer a lot of these questions once we get there, or do you need to insert something right now?
We have nothing planned that way. We're just going to kind of speak to things. But actually, what we were hoping this becomes always is a conversation dialogue about exactly where we are and exactly what we're doing. And right now, we're in phase 1, and I'm going to defer to us in a couple of seconds. This is where I talk more technology.
No, we're fine.
The phase 1 piece, which is where we're at, and we're in the middle of week 2, and that phase 1 piece is completely remote. And remember the triangles we walked everybody through. And by the way, just I was told or recommended that I remind people that according to our health commissioner, as long as we're sitting, talking to microphones in the setting, it's safe to take your mask off. But the phase 1 piece, we're on the 15th triangle, which is we're constantly just going to kind of review, listen, learn, and react appropriately. And we do have some data to share on that. I'll defer to Ross to kind of give an update quickly on ed camps and the data we received recently.
And don't forget, my treasurer has to finish her report too, so.
If I could jump in.
Yeah, we got it.
We'll go back to
We'll go back when we get to the CEO's portion.
If I could jump in real quick, just to answer Mr. Sturgill's question, I think there's a major difference that I can see is the fact that in the spring, very few teachers were Zooming because most of us didn't know how to Zoom. And I think what you've seen, whether it be through the ed camps or just people working on their own, have gotten to a point where, I'm here in the building every day and I see people Zooming, and I've had lots of feedback with parents and students, and there's a definite difference because the Monday, Wednesday, Friday synchronous days, people are trying to create the most normal classroom that they can possibly create in a virtual world. And I've been very impressed with my fellow colleagues and how they've been able to do that. And I've used the phrase over and over, it's building the airplane as you're flying it. And we've done a pretty good job of that. I can only speak for myself on this. I've had very good attendance. My attendance has been 95% or more of kids coming in on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I know not everybody has seen that good of attendance, but I've also been able to have no glitches. And I know my kids, they're high school kids, so they're able to log in maybe a little bit differently, obviously, than an elementary student. But for the most part, they've asked questions. They've been much more engaged. In the spring, I think it was a lot of just emails back and forth, where now we're seeing their faces. They're asking questions, whether it be in chats or just, interrupting us. And we have to encourage, at least I do, sometimes we're almost too quiet in the Zooms. I think they're a little scared of the technology piece of having a classroom. But for me, I think it's a lot better and much better than it was in the spring. Spring, we didn't really have the chance to prepare like we've had in this particular situation. And I think we've all stepped up to the plate and done a very nice job of trying to create a normalcy level for our kids. So.
Very good, thank you, thank you. Back to the treasurer, we got to talk about 8.02.
Those are 3 CRAs that were previously approved on agendas back in 2018 and 2019, but they have been delayed due to COVID setbacks, so we just want to put them back on the agenda so that they're updated with the correct dates.
Everybody clear about that? We previously approved them, but because of the COVID timeframe, things got delayed in the process of the building and the projects that were going on that were partnered with the city. So they're wanting to now reintroduce those, give it a clean start slate, so we don't run out of time to complete their CRA work. Any questions? We have them all, we pretty much got A, B, and C all together, right? So we only need one vote, Tia?
Oh, correct.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Roll call.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Valley?
Yes.
Ms. Nazario?
Yes.
And Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you. Next up, the report and recommendations of the CEO.
All right, and jumping where we left off, we're talking about phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And the point that I just want to comment on the conversation that took place earlier, to Steve's point, when students and teachers, when we're doing a Zoom thing, and actually have a lot of feedback from teachers saying PD is so much more effective and so much more efficient because you get in, you get your stuff and you're out, and there's not all the side conversations. I think with that though, candidly, I think there's a downside to that too, because as we're trying to either create or sustain a healthy climate and culture, it's tough to do remotely when you don't have the personal interaction piece. So I think that in terms of learning a new way to deliver quality teaching is one thing. I think it's happened very well. But again, taking care of one another is something we have to do with a little bit more intention. So just continue to encourage people to reach out and make sure that everybody else is doing all right.
And I think too, one other thing, Dr. Graham, is the fact that the district did provide, iPads and laptops and hotspots. I think that has helped to grow our ability to connect with our kids, because in the spring we didn't have that. So I think that's been a major plus as well, connecting with as many kids and families as possible.
Excellent. Good. Thank you. Okay, we were talking a little bit about how is it going. So in terms of the feedback piece, and right now it's our time to adjust our sails to make sure that we're maximizing phase 1 while we're creating phase 2 and phase 3. Awesome.
Yeah, so there are a few layers to this.
So the first layer is really a reflection on our preparation. And so we conducted the ed camps Dr. Graham referenced. Those 3 weeks leading up. And so at the end of each day of ed camp, we had a feedback ticket for our staff to complete at the end of the day. And just some of the results in that have been really important for us to know where we are so we can make adjustments. We ask at the end of each day, overall, I was satisfied with ed camp, and then they rate from extremely unsatisfied to extremely satisfied. And some of you have seen this data already. But we checked that each of the 3 weeks, and our lowest satisfaction was between pre-K and 2. 74% of our pre-K 2 teachers were satisfied at the end of week 2. Our highest was our 3rd through 5th grade teachers. 94.55% of them said that they were either satisfied or extremely satisfied with ed camp. But one of the great things here about this is that as we build in just kind of an ongoing natural measurement with our staff, that low at the end of week 2 for our pre-K 2, we had to make some adjustments because they told us very clearly we were not meeting their needs. The sessions that they were participating in were too kind of secondary based and weren't directed enough to what they needed, specifically around teaching reading and for just kind of a holistic approach to wellness for their students. So we made some adjustments, and then in week 3, 87% of our pre-K 2 teachers said that they were overall satisfied with ed camp that week. So we need to know all the time where we are so we can make some adjustments. So the ed camp data overall, just some other highlights are by the end of week 3, 92% of our high school teachers reported they were overall satisfied with ed camp. For 6-8, at the end of week 3, 81% of our 6-8 teachers said that they were overall satisfied with ed camp. So we know that our staff, they've told us, and we collected comments from them as well, overall are really very satisfied with ed camp. We asked them also then at the end of week 3 if they would like to see this model of professional learning continue once school is back and students are in session. And overwhelmingly our staff said yes. So the highest grouping was at the high school. 93% of the high school staff said in the survey, yes, they would like to see that continue as part of professional learning model going forward. Our low is at pre-K 2 again, and there we were at 73% of our pre-K 2 staff said yes, they would like to keep going with this model. So we're going to keep going. So we feel like that's been a success for us with how we're able to provide options, choice, and then leadership opportunities for our staff to professionally develop. So that's the first layer. The next layer is we need to see. The second layer gets a little hairy. The next layer is. Did somebody need to mute?
I was trying to get to the comments that are on the, sorry.
Good, all right.
Comments.
All right. The second layer is, as Dr. Graham referenced earlier, if you picture back to the triangles, and that 15th triangle is we need to make course corrections and adjustments. And we need information to let us know how well we're doing from both our staff and our families. And so Courtney, you and Tim have been part of that work group for that reset group. And just for those that aren't familiar with it, it's I don't know the exact number, between 35 and 40 members. We've got staff members in different staffing capacities. We've got some building principals. We've got obviously board members. A lot of different people with different roles in the district represented. And so starting next week, we're going to do a survey for staff to let us know essentially how we're doing. What's going well so far, what isn't going well so far. We have a couple items to ask about, maybe some potential opportunities coming up to gauge their interest. So that's one level. We're also going to ask specific questions about technology. Is the technology that you have working for you? Has the support you received been effective? Then we're also going to ask questions about scheduling, synchronous versus asynchronous, how well the engagement and the connection has gone with families. So we need to know how well are we doing from our staff. We also need to know from our families how well are we doing with families. So we're gonna do a real heavy push here through phone calls, through Dojo, through Remind, through our website, through social media, to try to get every family member to participate in the survey, to let us know from their perspective, how are you doing? And we've also made a number of adjustments to provide support that we need to know if they've been effective. So we've made some big adjustments to our meal program, for example. We need to see if we're in a better spot now than we were in July when we did that survey. We've obviously done a lot of work to make sure that our families have technology and internet. We need to know if it's working for them. So we're gonna check on that. We're gonna check on the remote learning, what has been success for our families so far, what have been challenges. So we can see after a few weeks how we're doing, and then what adjustments we need to make. So that's the next layer, and then the layer after that is we need to start preparing for phase 2. So we're going to start with that here coming up next week as well, with another pretty large group that's represented across the district, to start to look at our process for exploring what phase 2, which is a family choice for an in-person model, and what that needs to look like. So that's the next layer, and then the layer after that is to take really start looking at longer term plan development and looking at some really like important practices around how we collaborate, what the culture of the district looks like, the environment we create. So those are kind of all the layers that we've got coming up here in the next few weeks to see kind of in the immediate term, where are we, what adjustments do we need to make, the little bit on the horizon, what information do we need to gather, what processes do we need to put in place so we can have a safe, really effective phase 2 for our folks, and then a longer term plan as well. I'm missing here.
It's pretty good, and I think that he was talking about the information we're gathering to help us out with phase 1. But we also understand that also it's the groundwork for phase 2 and phase 3. Mm-hmm. Again, phase 2 being a hybrid version, and phase 3 bringing everybody come on back to the traditional way. And I'm hearing a lot of questions on, as we said all along, that we would not start school in any way other than we wouldn't make any major changes without giving a month's notice. And so I think that people are expecting unveiling today. There's no decisions been made. We are right now, we're making sure, based on the information that we're gathering, we're at the right place right now. We're going to continue the same process we followed from the very beginning, which I believe is a very collaborative approach, a very inclusive approach. We have many teachers and many support staff members from all grade levels, and all we have members of the board, we have members of the commission, we have building level administrators from all levels, central office administrators, and the goal is to listen and learn from every possible perspective, and then we'll make decisions. But we're not going to rush through decisions. We are, again, exactly where we should be, and we need to, first of all, determine what it looks like to do a hybrid model. We've talked about a few different scenarios. Then we have to talk about how to get there, and I think that last question is when. Now, that can't happen. We can have those answers quickly, but we don't have them today. And when we do, we'll make sure to communicate that out. And as we try to do from the very beginning is have every conversation that we've had behind closed doors or on all these Zoom sessions, we've echoed here. So again, the goal is to make sure that everybody in the Lorain City Schools community understands exactly not only where we are, but why we're here and why. And again, to the points that others have made, we're not exactly where everybody else is. And we understand that, but again, we're trying to handle things based on Lorain City School specific data and what the information is that we're getting from our families through surveys and from our staff through the surveys, as well as during all the conversations that we've had. So we've tried to be responsive to specifics, and we'll continue again out of that process.
Before you move to that topic,
Please, yeah.
just for a point of clarification, because that's a specific question that I had coming to me. We had said that we knew the first semester we were going to be in this position that we're in now.
First 9 weeks.
First 9
Yeah.
weeks. I'm not playing you into a corner, but that is still where we are today.
That's correct.
Further than 9
But I think that's why the question is being asked, because I think we're roughly 30 days away from the start of the second 9 weeks.
Mhm.
So the question is, well, you're going to tell us what's going on? And I can assure you, and those of you who don't know me, there's typically nothing to read between the lines. We kind of say things the way way we're thinking them. But we're also not whipping something up behind closed doors and we pull back the curtain and there's a plan. We're trying to be very open and honest and candid about exactly where we are. We're not there yet. Now, could we get there next week? Possible, unlikely. But once we do, I think the point we tried to make was, people originally said because, or interpreted our plan, that because we broke it up into a 9-week chunk to begin with, that okay, now tell us what's happening in the second 9 weeks. And I think we try to be very clear, if we can do it the right way, in the middle of the second 9 weeks, we're gonna do it. But you'll have plenty of notice because everybody has plans to make sure they can accommodate, a change of circumstance.
And I think one of the other things that may contribute to that is people attribute perhaps more meaning to 9 weeks, as if it's some kind of non-arbitrary number. I mean, 9 weeks is not really anything that is definitive in terms of learning process, in terms of how we teach curriculum. So I think that's that other piece is, okay, it's gonna occur either at that 9-week mark or it can't occur. And so we just need to make sure they understand that we're not bound, that gives us a good reference point. But there's nothing that is definitively significant about that 9 weeks. I think, is that accurate?
We're going to be fully transparent and crystal clear about every step of our process along the way as we enter in phase 2. And so we're not going to be coming back in person on October 16th, but we're going to give very clear updates about where we are every step of this phase 2 process. So there should be no surprises. And then whenever the group comes to the conclusion of this is what our phase 2 model is going to look like, that notice will go out and we'll have 30 days from then to prepare for it. So that's going to be our guidepost, not arbitrary dates, because if our process is ready before then we need to get our students back. If our process takes a little longer based on what we learn or encounter, or based on what I guess viral changes happen in the community, then it needs to take a little longer. But we want to try to stay away from arbitrary dates here. One of the doctors that we talked with, just I think a really important point to us, he said you don't want to create orphans, and we take this extremely seriously, and so we don't want to live by arbitrary dates. We want to make sure we live by really good, comprehensive, thorough processes to make sure that we don't create orphans.
So today, we thought we were getting report card data. And I mean, refresh, rehit, and everything just kept saying NR. Did it ever populate, or was that the population is just gonna say NR the whole time?
Because of the way the school year ended last year, there were only a few things that we actually were able to measure.
Okay.
Because school ended, COVID ended the school year before those state tests could take place.
About a week out.
So graduation rates, success,
Prepared for success.
prepared for success, well, there's like 2 or 3 other.
K through literacy.
There's stuff that happened at the beginning of the school year. So, yes, we do have a few measures, and Ross, do you want to speak to them? Actually, pull up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we, as Dr. Graham said, the only measures that are, and they're only reported, there's no rating attached at all. It's only reported, our graduation rate, which is actually reported in the fall. So it lags a year. The improving at-risk K-3 readers, that complete measure is not reported, but the fall parts of that measure are reported. And then the prepared for success, which also lags just like graduation. So all of those items are actually from the prior year's school year, not the school year that just completed. So those data items are there. There are no grades attached to any of them. There's no overall grade. It's just simply a reporting of what the district's data was for those submissions. There will be no achievement data coming later because the test did not occur obviously in the spring. Value added will not be calculated because again, the test didn't occur. The gap closing measure that the district saw large improvement over the prior year won't happen again. Those are all based on tests that did not happen. So without spring testing happening, that's a lot of the report card that just there will be nothing to show up for based on that.
And with them postponing this year, or suspending, I guess, this year's grading, where will our baseline come from when it's time to fire this machine up to date? Do you have any idea, or is that a question that hasn't been determined just yet?
If it's been determined, I don't know.
No.
And it's one of those things too, they're in the process of evaluating the whole report card system in general.
Correct.
And I know that actually Ross has put together one of the, I would argue, one of the front runners in the state in terms of how to look at, the most appropriate data to look at and how to look at. But as of right now, and there's the law that went into effect last year that said that districts would have harmed, that would all be held harmless as a result. Obviously, that means no more schools going into distress. It also means no more schools getting out. Yeah, because your status can't change as a result of the data that would have been collected last year. And as of right now, I don't think there's anything in place for right now. I think there have been some bills introduced that recommend we also pump the brakes this year on what happens. But again, the downside for us is that
We're stuck.
we're stuck, yeah. It's other districts, there'll be no consequences as a result of this. But our consequences go like positive.
And I do know, just talking to the people at the state, that there has been some new laws introduced, or at least being talked about.
The bill's been introduced, and actually, Senator Manning is working on some pieces, and
It's good.
hopeful that there's a light at the end of our tunnel.
And in 2 weeks, with the Ohio School Boards Association, the Urban Work Group meeting, we're going to talk through in good depth. Well, their lobbyists will be there to talk through the status of all the bills, but then we're going to talk through our report card proposal. So actually, we need to get together ahead of time to go through and where that proposal left off, and just so we're kind of up to speed and you guys are walking in there feeling fully armed and ready to go.
And I guess the last question that I had that has come from a couple of parents was about sports. So I understand that have we started some level of practicing or working out or?
Yeah, well, and again, our goal is to
The
keep
second caveat to that question is, if we're practicing that, why can't our kids come back to school? That's one parent's question. And the other is, why are we practicing if we have no chance of playing a season here in the fall season? So that's me combining about three.
The goal is to keep our kids with our adults and off the streets the best we can. We have great people, and I think the more contact our students have with our people, the better off our kids are going to be. The difference between being able to, let me qualify that. The state says we can do a lot of things. The state says we can play football. The state says we can do all these different pieces. And they created ways to take those close proximity sports and make them safer-ish. Fewer games, whatever. But we still know, and again, the opinions haven't changed, that it's still, even though the state allows it, doesn't mean the CDC recommends it. And even the governor, when he said, I'll allow it, but please understand you're higher risk in all these different bullet points. So for us, the piece is we're not allowing to do what the state says we can do. We're allowing our coaches and athletes to do what the CDC recommends you can do. And then why can't we come into math class as opposed to what's happening? And one of the reasons, and again, we're one of the few districts in this area that are full remote. But again, that's based on what our people told us. When we surveyed our families, they said, we're not sending our kids. And when we said, well, and we had a lot of folks who wouldn't send them, what happens if there's a positive case, which we know there would be? Then 30% more are, and so the numbers were huge in terms of a lack of support from our families about sending their kids to school. So there needs to be an education campaign on what the realities are, and as well as what we're doing to make sure we address those realities. And we just weren't there yet. So to answer the question, I guess the shorter answer is because we weren't prepared to do school in a way that was consistent with what the CDC recommends. We can do what people allow, but again, we know that that's still not the safest approach for us. We surveyed our staff. They weren't ready. There's so many pieces of the puzzle that screamed lack of, that we need to prepare, and we did. I think to Steve's point, in the spring, that we have technology. There's so many things we're missing that we were playing in. And I don't mean that anything that I'm saying is a criticism against any of my predecessors. I think anytime you have a turnover in leadership, and not just one person, but teams of people have changed. This is the third time in 6 months or 8 months or whatever when I first arrived. So there's just organizational settling that needs to take place so we can regroup and take off, so.
And I will end my comments with the good news from teachers, from parents, from people who are watching what's going on in Lorain. I've had very positive comments on how we've opened, how we've handled it. When there's an issue and a problem, people are jumping over each other to try to solve that issue for people. So I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from teachers who I thought would have been very critical, and they're personal friends of mine, to say, wow, I'm very impressed on how this thing is rolling out. So kudos to you and your team for that.
I appreciate that. We have good people and everything else is easy. And our focus from the very beginning is how do we take care of people during this awful time. So, thank you.
Yeah, I kind of have a question. So I know we anticipated, 5,000 devices going out, some number. Question, how are we on that? I know I've come in a few times for things and I would see the lines of cars getting devices. So did we hit the number that we were trying to hit, that we expected and anticipated? Do we feel like, is there a process in place for folks who didn't get those devices that they can still, the community might know, but just kind of inform us, and they can sometimes saying it here, some folks hear it and then they can react or respond. So kind of where are we with our device distribution? Is the question.
See what is that answer?
Well, yeah, so we're your ears were burning a couple hours ago. So we met this afternoon to figure exactly that out now. And we're going to actually use that device distribution to help us with our attendance verification. So I don't know if Jane or Michael, if you guys are on, if you want to talk in a little bit greater depth about what that process is going to look like. But the short of it is that we are going to survey all of our schools to see where we are with device pickup, to make sure we know exactly who's picked it up. And again, we want to give a couple of weeks here for all that kind of initial transition to happen. But so I don't know, Michael or Jane, you guys on, you want to just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Ross, you did make the points very well. The principals today, in typical school year, we talk about enrollment relative to butts and seats. Well, we now know, obviously, we have virtual seats, and where we're beginning with that is around the laptop distribution data. So, for instance, I was in a couple buildings this morning, and I can see 5 laptops still on a table. So the principals have an idea of exactly what has been distributed and what hasn't. So we're going to gather that information over the next few days. We'll be able to report out next week exactly where we are. But that's how we're going to, begin to tackle the enrollment. The outreach also with our various classifications of jobs is beginning to occur now. So getting out to the home even further. Our administrators have done a tremendous job, along with the teaching staff, of going when we know that they need the device and haven't been able to come and pick it up. Now, when we're starting to begin the process of actually knocking on the door of people who haven't come and find out why. So we'll have a lot more updates in the next few days. That process was solidified today, and it was rolled out via email with principals and Elena and Pat Agency. Central office are going to make sure that we have all that data so that we can be responsive to it.
And also, I know that we had there were some discussions around utilization of staff and kind of redistribution of jobs, because we don't need this, but we need that. How is that going? And again, I think our community should know that folks are really chipping in to assist. I remember when I came in to get something from the media center, all the security folks were getting devices ready. And I think that's a real, folks are saying, hey, how can I help? Is that going well? Are we?
Amazingly well. And again, if you look at what people are doing now, I don't care what union you're in or what your job description looks like, it looks different now. The needs now don't match what happened or what we needed a year ago. And people are being incredibly supportive and doing jobs that are well outside their job description because there's a need. And one of the questions that I've been asked a lot from the media is, from the very beginning, is about layoffs, lay people off. And we have great people, we don't lose them. And they still have families to feed, they still have mortgages to pay, and we want to make sure that we're taking care of it. But everybody has chipped in. I've heard in the neighborhood of 0 complaints about being asked to work outside of the scope of their work. And I think that we're trying to make sure that we align people with, because again, what we don't want to do is, okay, this is secretarial work, and so we don't need your job description, we'll hire a bunch of secretaries, and then in 2 months, we'll get rid of all those extras. So everybody is chipping. So again, it's just been a family approach, and it's pretty impressive to watch.
And how is I know we added, quite a number of food distribution sites. How is all of that? I mean, we were trying to figure out, kids are sitting on a virtual classroom and then getting lunch. I mean, how does that whole thing look?
Now, I'll kind of give you a brief update. This started on September 8th. We changed our distribution sites from 13 locations to 39 across the city. Again, all of this, these adjustments came from the process we talked about before, when we heard that our parents said, well, two things. First of all, half of the parents who were looking for food said they didn't have access to it. So the second part of that question is, well, why not? And they gave us what we needed to do to make that happen. And the service model went from 20 minutes at each site of the 13 to a bus stop style of 5 to 10 minutes for 36 stops, and then 2 hours from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock at 3 stops. Went from 5 days of service to service on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And again, the reason for that was they requested it. The feedback we heard is, I don't go grocery shopping every day. Why would I go pick up my meals every day? So we want to be, again, more respectful to people we serve. So, and on September 8th, I served 730 children 3 meals for 2 days, for a total of 4,380 meals. 2 breakfast, 2 lunch, and 2 dinner. And then on September 10th, we served 1,077 children 3 meals for 3 days. So a total of 9,693 meals, 3 breakfasts, 3 lunch, 3 dinners. And of course, the supper snack. And last week, we served a total of 1,807 children, 14,073 meals. We've updated the menu to include favorites, such as pizza, walking tacos, popcorn chicken salad, and mashed potato bowl. We've updated the packaging of the meals, so each meal is individually packaged, and then all meals are placed in 1 bag. We are serving at least 1 child at every bus stop, a location with Johannes serving the highest of 103 children on September 10th. Late afternoon and evening locations, Washington served 132, Larkmore 82, and Southie was 144. And meals are served cold with eating instructions. And again, as you can see from the numbers, it's growing daily. So we'll continue to listen, we'll continue to learn, we'll continue to engage as we get feedback on how to be better.
And we'll have a really good, hopefully clear picture in a couple of weeks after the family survey, so we can see, and again, then we can contrast that with where we were in July to see the impact that our adjustments made.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, board? Do you have anything? Ms. Johnson, you have anything?
You know, I'm just very impressed that as we find out there's a need, that we step up as a community and we feel that need for the students, and it seems to be working. I get a lot of positive feedback too, that other cities want to copy our playbook.
And again, and I made this comment before, and I'll echo again, obviously that's our plan for serving meals to our children. If your circumstances are so extenuating that this does not apply to you, give us a call, figure it out. So we understand that some people, for whatever reason, have very specific needs. And our goal is that regardless of what those needs are, that need, so.
Courtney, you have anything?
I have one thing. I wanted to say thank you to the new president, Julie Garcia from LEA, for getting back to me so promptly when I had some questions for her when she first got elected. But I really appreciate it, and I look forward to working with her.
That's it from the CEO? You have anything further in your
I
report?
think that's all I got in my stack of stuff, except for the items that are on the agenda. So walk through those.
I'm sure.
You got questions on those, or?
I think I'm clear, but if you'd like to.
Nope, there's.
You're good?
Yeah, whatever you want to handle this. So to be respectful, what we're trying to do is, and if you don't mind, Tim, when I was here on my first tour, one of the frustrations from the board, and Tim shared it, is that we don't have a say until the end, which is all these things happen, and we bring it to a vote, and that's when the board gets to speak. So again, and during my first tour, very purposeful in making sure we're engaging board members to make sure they have a seat at every table. And again, I think it's our leadership style. It's where we want to be. We want to make sure that we're collaborative, we're open, everything's out there, and we want input. So what we're doing is we meet before these meetings to talk about all the items on the agenda. We meet to discuss them in public, and we just want to make sure that everyone understands all that goes into it. I just think it's how healthier organizations operate, where there's constant dialogue between people who are responsible for making the decisions. So I just want to say thanks for your approach.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Nothing additional, nothing further from board members. We have our second hearing from the public. Is there anything from the public? I see none. So I'll just make a statement. I appreciate this board allowing us to postpone yesterday's meeting till today so we could go and support one of our neighboring school districts right here in our community. The community showed up there in a very big way. I think they were there to support those young people, our students. A lot of their students are our students. They walk our streets with our kids. And to see the way that the community poured out and really were standing up and demanding things are treated fairly for those kids was outstanding. So for that, thank this board for allowing that to happen, and thank the community for reaching out and being the village that it should be. And thank you all for that. I have nothing further. So it looks like our next meeting will be on September the 28th at 5. And before I close, does anybody else have any other comments? Hearing none, need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support. Roll call.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill,
Yes.
Mr. Ballard,
Yes.
Ms. Nazario,
Yes.
and Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Sir. And I talked to the chief. And he's inviting me to look at it. So we want to agree, I think we're